Good morning, everyone, and delighted to chair this fifth plenary session at the 21st IISS Manama Dialogue. Is there any subject more important and that we've talked about so much already than managing political transitions in the Levant? We really look forward to this splendid panel and to the conversation dialogue that you will have with them this morning. A reminder on the housekeeping point, each of the speakers will speak in the order in which they appear both on the agenda and on the stage, 8 to 9 minutes, and then when the 4 presentations have been made, we'll return to you to make crisp comments, ask brilliant questions, and I will take maybe 8 or 9 in a group and then come back to the stage. A reminder for those who might be freshly here this morning and weren't here yesterday that the way to enter the queue for questions is to put your card into the microphone machine, press the button, the microphone will turn green, but it won't be on. You will be in the queue. I'll see your name, your nationality, your affiliation, which will help the speakers when I introduce you. And when I do, your mic will turn red, it'll be on, and then when you're finished, it'll go off again. So that's the important housekeeping remarks before this plenary session begins. But what a pleasure to have Dr. Asad Hassan al-Shaibani, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates in Syria. The last time I saw him was in Davos. I was sitting behind him. It's an honor to be now sitting beside him. And we very much look forward to his remarks and his thoughts on how the new Syria can build. We have an even greater pleasure to have a friend back again, Dr. Anwar Gargash, who has been a great friend of the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Manama Dialogue, the IISS, diplomatic advisor to the President in the UAE, and it's fantastic to have him here. His remarks are always carefully paid attention to. And of course, given the subject matter, it's also especially fantastic to have Dr. Varsana Bekian Shaheen, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the State of Palestine, and to have also with us Dr. Manal Radwan, the Minister of Plenipotentiary and head of the negotiating team in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Saudi Arabia, who's played a very important role in thinking about transitions in the Levant. So we have 4 fantastic speakers here today. We're so proud of having them with us. And could I now ask Dr. Asad Hassan al-Shaibani to address us. He will be speaking in Arabic, and so those of you who have a need for the headset should take them now, untangle them, put the earphones in, and Dr. al-Shaibani, the podium is yours.
In the name of God, first of all, I would like to thank you very much for this introduction, and I would like to thank the IISS and the Kingdom of Bahrain for the warm welcome. I would like to thank you for being keen on having Syria at this platform. I would like as well to thank all the excellencies who are with us today. Thank you to the delegates and to the audience. If we go back to some weeks before being liberated from the Assad regime last year, in order for me to show the importance and the volume of the transition that we are living now in Syria. So in October 2024, the Kingdom of Bahrain had announced the arrest of the seizure of 130,000 Captagon pills. And in fact, this was the Syrian regime that has transformed Syria into a narco state that has affected the entire area from Saudi Arabia to Italy, with this Captagon pandemic that has really created the most important catastrophe at the humanitarian level in the entire area. Syria has become an a regional platform for crises, conflicts, and threats. At that time, we were planning how we will be liberating our population from dictatorship, from this oppression, and to see how can we change the face of Syria and change its image in order for it to be decent in the world. So it was not only a vision of a military, it was a liberation image that will be liberating the Syrian population, giving them opportunity, enabling and empowering them in their country, giving them the possibility to live up to the aspirations of the Syrian population. And we try to see how can we really benefit by the physical and moral characteristics of Syria and its presence in the Levant. So in order to see how can we optimize the capacities of the Syrian population, this population that is really smart, very successful abroad and sometimes failing in their own state. So since 2024, October 2024 till date, it's 11 months, but it was a short period, but with huge challenges that we have faced in this very short period of time. We had lots of hope, we had lots of feelings, mitigated feelings with hope, pain, aspiration. Consequently, this period of time is a time of pride for us because all the promises that we had talked about during the first month were more or less achieved. 90% of what we talked about was achieved. So we had the national dialogue, the government, the constitutional declaration, the openness to the neighborhood, the foreign policies that are based on development, peace, giving the opportunity for our population to reconstruct and rebuild their country, attracting foreign investment, showing Syria in a new face and a correct one, and dealing with the destructive consequences that had completely changed the face of our country in the past. Also, we had another vision that was based on three main principles, intertwined principles. We have started with the local stability at the local, regional, and neighborhood level. So now Syria has more or less acceptable stability. It is also a partner. It is a regional partner with the neighborhood, especially with regards to fighting drugs, and also is an international partner in dealing with the international threats that are being faced by the entire world. Syria is playing a real important role at this level. The second principle that we're basing ourselves on, and the second pillar of our transitional vision, is the balanced diplomacy. We do not want Syria to be based on polarization as it was previously under the Assad regime, so to be with people against others. And as you know, maybe safeguarding this balance is something that is very difficult. It is very rare in our situation. We are trying as much as we can to be at equal distance with everybody, respecting everybody, holding relationships based on collaboration, cooperation, trade relations, openness, and being peaceful and spreading peace in the region and in the world. We were able to establish a state far from the confessional denominations that we used to have previously with minorities and majorities in the country. We want the law to be the main balance, to be the judge of everybody, regardless the religion, and regardless the background, because Syria is a diversified country at the cultural, ideological, and religious level. And I think that this diversification is a main pillar of our development, and there is a main link amongst the population of Syria. So in fact, this period, we know that it will not be flowery everywhere and easy and secure. No, we know that we have faced lots of challenges and even lots of tests. Previously, we talked about this. We did not surrender towards these challenges. We were committed to justice. We have established the National Committee for the Disappeared in order to solve this problem. And in Syria, we have more than 250,000 disappeared And also now we are working on transitional justice. We have established the National Committee for Transitional Justice, and it is the one that we're relying on for justice and truth to reach people and for us to protect our population, to protect the victims from surrendering or getting into vendetta, as we have seen this in some other areas after the toppling of regimes, where we have the states getting into revenge, and vendetta. This is why we are resorting to the law in order to protect our population. At the end, we have had legislative elections. Of course, we have many challenges, but in fact, they are not hindering this process. We hope that the first parliamentary session in Syria, a transparent, parliament elected by the local population. So we hope that it will be held in November very soon, and in a way that will be, of course, living up to the aspirations and the interests of our populations. Of course, this is not theoretical. We have lots of teams working on these issues since day one. We also want to confirm that our aspirations and our visions within this track will not stop. So we did not reach what we are aspiring for. This is only the start for the Syria of the future, the new Syria. We want Syria to be an efficient, effective state, far from any foreign interference, without any regional or international polarization, a state that is not a source of concern. We want people, whenever they talk about Syria, we want them to give the positive adjectives. He's asking about the timer, I think. At the end, I would like to tell you that from this stage, we are extending our hands to our partners and our brothers in the region in order for this to reflect not only instability and prosperity for our country, but also the goodness and the benefit and peace of the entire region. Thank you very much.
Dr. Al-Sharbani, thank you so much for noting that in domestic politics, Syria's national identity will not be defined by its different confessional constituencies, and that in foreign policy, your attitude will be one of multi-alignment. I'm sure there'll be questions to ask on how well the transitional judicial process is going and how you will be able to build your economy in good time. With that, Dr. Anwar Gargash from the United Arab Emirates, the podium is yours, and everybody is looking forward to your perspective.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I have to say I'm delighted again to be invited here by the Kingdom of Bahrain, by my friend Abdul Latif Zayani, and by the IISS. Thank you very much. And, considering that last year in December, we saw the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, so I think this is quite a poignant note on how big the changes that we are seeing here, and we're seeing Dr. Asad Shibani here speak to 11 months later. It's a pleasure to be here in Manama once again. Allow me to begin to express my gratitude to our host on the IISS for convening this timely discussion. I appreciate the opportunity to exchange perspectives on our region, its challenges, its transformations, and its future. These conversations, as usual, are both timely and necessary. This morning, I'd like to share some reflections that I believe are relevant to our discussion about managing political transitions in the Levant and the region overall. This is because we are faced with what I believe to be a moment of genuine opportunity for our region, and the choices we make now will define the Middle East that emerges from this period of upheaval. The recent ceasefire in Gaza has brought much needed relief, but also an inflection point. After 2 years of war and immense suffering, we stand at the threshold of a new chapter. This moment must not be wasted. History informs us that after major conflict, there are aftershocks. These aftershocks can be political, they can be social, and may take time to fully emerge. It would be unrealistic to imagine that our region will be spared them. It is vital that we begin preparing for them now. Whatever the final terms of the ceasefire and the shape that arrangements will take, there is a fundamental truth we cannot ignore, and that is that moving forward requires hard and serious work. Without this essential work, without reconciliation, trust building, and accountability, any agreement will remain fragile and at risk of collapse. At the heart of this lies the need for a credible political horizon. A genuine two-state solution remains the cornerstone of a stable Middle East. It is very difficult to imagine that there could be a lasting peace in the region until there is a Palestinian state living side by side in peace, security, and dignity with Israel. The second challenge we must address is one that history warns us about: the danger of extremist narratives, feeding on the trauma caused by years of war. In such times, voices of intolerance that often speak the loudest, voices that see human suffering as collateral damage, can poison the peace and lay the foundations for future conflict. We see this risk on all sides today. Maximalist views, whether in Israel or in the Arab world or elsewhere, can easily take hold if left unchallenged. They threaten to replace dialogue with dogma and compromise with confrontation. We must therefore strengthen the moderate narrative. This is a narrative grounded in coexistence, pragmatism, and respect for human dignity. The region needs a vision that empowers people rather than divides them, a vision that acknowledges differences but insists on dialogue as the only path forward. Transitions after conflicts are always moments of vulnerability, when societies are searching for meaning, when people are angry, disillusioned, and afraid. Managing these transitions will depend not only on political arrangements, but on how successfully we create space for constructive narratives and inclusive governance. When it comes to some of the fragile transitions in our region, it is important to stand with those who are working for stability, progress, and coexistence. We cannot allow extremist narratives to hijack these efforts. A successful transition, therefore, requires that men and women who are trying to chart a different path for their countries after years of war and instability also have partners on the outside. In other words, we must acknowledge the good actors who are trying to build peace from within. We cannot afford to repeat the mistakes of the past. There is no return to the previous status quo. The only sustainable path forward is one rooted in partnership, regional cooperation, economic integration, and political dialogue that transcends old rivalries. The UAE's own foreign policy is guided by this belief. We seek to build bridges, to create spaces where cooperation is possible, even amidst political differences. We look to find the common good in economic cooperation and investment that leads to tangible improvements in the lives of our peoples. We prioritize humanitarian efforts aimed at ensuring the safety and well-being of people. This approach underpins our engagement across the region, from the Gulf to the Levant, and reflects our conviction that stability anywhere in the Middle East benefits us all. I'd like to conclude by offering several observations that have become very clear after years of crisis in the region. First, it is paramount that we work to strengthen the role of the nation-state. Militias and non-state actors should not be allowed to chart the course of a country. Furthermore, the idea that the Palestinian issue could be contained or managed while other efforts moved forward is clearly not plausible. It never was. Nor can we lose sight of the humanitarian cost of conflict. The humanitarian element should not be an afterthought. Even in the midst of war, it must remain a continuous focus. Finally, the Arab region should not become a larger part of the designs of any power. As a region that is working to fulfill aspirations of its people and chart a path of prosperity, we should not merely be seen by others as a buffer or as a means to preserve deterrence or achieve other defense strategy goals. At the same time, geoeconomic priorities must be accorded their proper place of importance. The economic stability and well-being of the region is key for its political stability and development. With all that in mind, I'd like to emphasize that the UAE remains a steadfast partner in efforts to ensure that this moment of fragile peace becomes a foundation for enduring stability. We will continue to work with regional and international partners to support peace. The task ahead will not be easy, and the aftershocks of war will continue to test us. But the future of the Levant and the wider Middle East will depend on whether we can turn this difficult moment into a new beginning. I'll stop here, and I look forward to our discussion later on. Thank you.
Dr. Anwar, thank you very much for that central message, which is that maximalist views must not take hold, moderation is the way forward, and we must push aside those who replace compromise with confrontation and dialogue with dogma. I think that sounds like the right approach that we should all work to follow. A Palestinian voice now. We've been speaking about the state of Palestine for a long time, and we're honored and delighted that we have the Foreign Minister of Palestine with us.
Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, dear guests, thank you. Thank you for hosting me at this particular time, marked by many regional and international changes and transformations. I hope that our dialogue here in Manama will contribute to informing thinkers, policymakers, and decision makers about the reality and about ways to move in the right direction based on rights, law, and international consensus. The calamities, suffering, genocide, and grave crimes that the region is witnessing are directly caused by the Israeli colonial occupation that has enjoyed impunity for crimes committed during 77 years since the Nakba and 57 years of its long-term occupation of the West Bank, including Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip, the Syrian Golan, and southern Lebanon. However, the geostrategic changes in the Levant, in Palestine, and in neighboring countries, despite the war of extermination that the Palestinian people are experiencing, have generated opportunities that must be seized. Challenges that accompany them must be confronted. We are faced with two initiatives for a new Middle East. The first is an initiative led by the world towards a stable Middle East, living in security, peace, prosperity, and dignity, without occupation and wars for the peoples of the region. In this Middle East, there is the state of Palestine and the two-state solution. This was evident in the effort led by Saudi Arabia and France at the international conference held in New York to find a settlement to the Palestinian issue peacefully and to implement the two-state solution through the UN resolutions. The New York Declaration, which constitutes a practical roadmap for implementing the two-state solution, was adopted, thus strengthening the international momentum for recognizing the state of Palestine, given that recognition is a requirement for peace and not just a way out of the political process. It has also contributed in the involvement of President Trump and his administration. He presented his plan to stop the aggression on the Gaza Strip. We welcome the efforts of the US President and the subsequent summit of Sharm el-Sheikh. This makes all of these complementary efforts, from the momentum of international recognitions and the New York Declaration to President Trump's plan, a means to end the war and achieve recovery in the Gaza Strip in addition to rebuilding it. We emphasize the need for a national, Palestinian-led, Arab-supported, and internationally assisted reconciliation and reconstruction process. This national effort must culminate in concerted efforts and must reflect a firm commitment to international law and accountability. Through this initiative, it is important to make things clear about the Gaza Strip and its future. Despite the ceasefire and the efforts of the American president, Gaza still faces immense destruction, a humanitarian catastrophe, and profound human suffering. We need to provide for the sustainability of the ceasefire, and we need to prevent famine, displacement, or the geographical and demographic reduction in Gaza. The Gaza Strip is an integral part of the occupied state of Palestine. The Gaza Strip and the West Bank, including occupied Jerusalem, form a single geographical unit. We must highlight the unified political, legal, and administrative system between Gaza and the West Bank under the sovereignty of the state of Palestine. We have a clear policy made up of one state, one government, one law, and one weapon. The reconstruction process in Gaza must be nationally owned with international support for the government of Palestine. Its authority has the main role in governance and security, while Israel, the occupying power, must completely withdraw from the Gaza Strip. Through the Arab Islamic Reconstruction Plan, the State of Palestine agreed to a transitional mechanism for a Palestinian technocratic committee headed by a minister in the Palestinian government in order to manage the Gaza Strip temporarily. It will work on unifying Palestinian national institutions, providing services to our affected population. We agreed on the issue of the International Stabilization Force, provided that it comes at the invitation of the State of Palestine and that it gets legitimacy from the Security Council so that its mandate and time frame are defined. Its role is to support Palestinian security and not to replace Palestinian security services nor the government. It will be deployed on the borders for monitoring and follow-up and not to impose anything on the Palestinian people. The second initiative is Netanyahu's initiative for a burning Middle East. It involves destruction and targeting the Levant and the region more extensively in order to perpetuate instability, wars, killing, genocide, and aggression against sovereign states like Syria, Lebanon, and Qatar. This initiative is based on the genocide in the Gaza Strip, where, as you know, more than 70,000 people were killed, 170,000 were wounded. Famine was used as a weapon of war, while displacement continues. At the same time, in the West Bank, we are witnessing colonial settlements, attempts to annex the land. We are witnessing settler terrorism, ethnic cleansing, arbitrary arrest, the fragmentation of the West Bank with more than 1,200 iron gates and military checkpoints, economic blockade, theft of natural resources and of Palestinian tax revenues, international organizations, including UNRWA, being prevented from working, and other documented crimes that have been adjudicated by international courts. Netanyahu's initiative completely ignores the rights of the Palestinian people and their state, ignores the two-state solution. It even goes so far as to promote Israel's colonial ambitions for greater Israel. This threatens all Arabs. It threatens security, peace, and stability with its neighbors because it wants to expand at their expense. Israel has been encouraged to proceed with its expansionist and hostile colonial ideology by the double standards of the international community, by the failure to take punitive steps for the crimes committed by Israel against the region. It has been provided with military and logistical support on the ground and the power of veto in international fora. This has made it go further in its ambition to bully and to thug the region, to expand its dreams, thinking that it is possible to keep the Middle East burning and unstable. Such an initiative must be confronted. It has to be rejected. All available tools at the disposal of the international community must be used to curb it because it's a recipe for continued aggression and its consequences will be disastrous for everyone. Despite this, there are many opportunities stemming from the international momentum for a two-state solution, the New York Declaration, the Trump Plan, and the imperative to end the occupation and the war irreversibly, including in the Levant and in the wider region. The world is united on the importance of the recovery and reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. The world is capable of finding resources for this, including building the civilian and security capacities of the State of Palestine. The world is supporting the Palestinian government's reform plan. These reforms should, however, not be conditional. They should not constitute a reason for hindering Palestinian independence or a reason for delaying the carrying out by the Palestinian government of its responsibilities in the Gaza Strip. As for Palestinian security and the protection of the Palestinian people, it has to be a priority on the international agenda. Regional security means equal sovereignty for the countries of the region, full sovereignty without any encroachment on the geography or demographics of other countries. The greatest challenge today lies in making decisions at the international level without coordination and dialogue with stakeholders, or imposing something on the countries of the region that is outside the scope of international law, or that contradicts the basic rights of the peoples of the region, foremost the rights of the Palestinian people. There is a challenge in continuing to encourage Israel in its colonial and hostile policies against the Levant and backing down from imposing sanctions on it, or ignoring the role of the State of Palestine and its government, or even bypassing such a role, or forming international or local frameworks that reinforce and perpetuate division or occupation, or allow Israel to obstruct reconstruction or pursue its occupation of the Gaza Strip. In the midst of the challenges we face as a Palestinian people, and in order to achieve the two-state solution and to advance state institutions, we have included a plan for development and reform, focusing on strengthening governance, transparency, and accountability, the ability to provide services efficiently and effectively, paying attention to economic fluctuations and social equality, and fulfilling the expectations of the people in all its categories in terms of political and social participation. We are calling for a unified internal leadership and inclusive institutions in a general democratic atmosphere, and a systematic reform program that is implemented and followed up accurately. The Peace, Security and Stability Initiative, or the Fire, War and Destruction Initiative. The Palestinian people sees their struggle as part of the struggle of the people yearning for freedom and dignity. Our people has chosen the path of steadfastness and resistance to the crimes of the occupation by relying on international law and the international consensus on the inalienable rights. Our people is looking forward to the horizon of freedom and independence from the Israeli occupation and the establishment of the independent state. Our people is confident in the great international support for its goal and for international justice as a tool to do justice and redress harm. We are at a crucial stage, so either we are or we are not. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for emphasizing that the transition needs to be Palestinian-led and Arab-supported with the right international engagement. And perhaps in the conversation we have, we can look at what that right international engagement should be. You mentioned Saudi Arabia's important role in working hard to build the alliance for a two-state solution. So Saudi Arabia, please address this plenary session. Thank you very much, Manal.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
In the name of God, Your Excellence, Your Highness, Your Excellence, Mr. Abdel Latif Al-Zayani, dear audience.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me first to express my deep appreciation to the Kingdom of Bahrain and to the International Institute for Strategic Studies for convening this essential dialogue and for providing a platform where information is shared, ideas debated, and policy shaped. The title of this session, Managing Political Transition in the Levant, invites both reflection and resolve. For too long, our region has been governed by the politics of management, not of transformation, of postponing the inevitable, not confronting the unsustainable. At times, we have repeated failed past experiments, blaming the nature or culture of the region, rather than the circumstances that produced such failures and the lessons not learned. We have thought to contain fires rather than extinguish them, to pause wars rather than resolve them, to administer despair rather than restore hope. This time must be different. Management sustains the status quo. Transformation changes it. Transformation requires political courage, moral clarity, and collective responsibility, and above all, regional agency to rebuild legitimacy, to renew the social contract between citizen and state, to restore trust between states themselves, to tackle conflicts at their grassroots, and to allow for genuine introspection of the self and of the other. Nowhere is this lesson more urgent than in Palestine. What we are witnessing today is not a cycle of conflict, but a sustained campaign of destruction and dehumanization. A genocide in which entire neighborhoods have been erased, families annihilated, hospitals and schools deliberately targeted, and the very conditions of life rendered unlivable. This is not an accident of war. It is a consequence of policy. It represents the systemic extinguishing of a people's right to exist in dignity and freedom. We have condemned repeatedly all attacks against civilians, including those of 7 October. But every attack, every day, since October 8, must not be legitimized under any pretext and must equally be condemned. We just heard in the West Bank, violence takes a different but equally chilling form. Armed settler groups, often operating under army protection, terrorize civilians with impunity. Only days ago, Afaf Abu Alia, a 50-year-old woman harvesting olives in her village, was beaten unconscious by a masked settler while soldiers stood by. Harvesting olives, a simple act of livelihood and continuity, has become an act of defiance against erasure. Such atrocities are not isolated. They are systemic, part of a strategy to dispossess, displace, and dominate. And as long as impunity replaces accountability, injustice will fester and radicalization will deepen. No amount of narrative of peace will resolve this. No amount of reform in education curriculum will resolve this. If the lives of Palestinians continue to be formed and shaped by occupation, by dehumanization, by indignity, this is only going to breed more and more radicalization, not only in the occupied territories, but worldwide. Violence and disregard for human life breed not security, but endless war. It is not alarming, but shocking. It's not only alarming, but shocking to witness the normalization of supremacist rhetoric, hate speech, and incitement against Palestinians and Arabs, including by government officials, acting with full impunity. The torture of prisoners, including children, represents practices that degrade not only the victim, but the very concept of humanity itself. The world must raise its voice. It's not enough. What we have witnessed so far is not enough. The people of Palestine cannot hear you. Amidst the despair of the past 2 years, and under the leadership of President Donald Trump, and with active regional diplomacy led by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, a ceasefire was achieved based on principles that must now define the political path forward. Let me highlight some of them. No annexation of the West Bank or Gaza in whole or in part. No transfer or displacement of Gazans. Those who fled must be allowed to return. This is the backbone of why the ceasefire was accomplished. But now it is time to move to the next phase. Now it is time to pursue a clear, time-bound Israeli withdrawal. It is now time to pursue something that the Palestinians have asked for years, an international protection force based on a request by the State of Palestine. This international stabilization force must be deployed to protect Palestinians, but also to empower the Palestinian Authority and to empower Palestinian National Police. Transitional governance of Gaza must not prejudice Palestinian sovereignty, but must contribute to the unification of Gaza and the West Bank. The return of the Palestinian Authority to Gaza must be guaranteed, consistent with the New York Declaration. These steps are not the end goal. They are the pathway to the realization of the Palestinian state and the implementation of the two-state solution, leading ultimately to regional integration based on security, stability, and shared prosperity for all people, for all states of the region. We cannot do it in the reverse. A Palestinian state is a prerequisite for regional integration. We have said it many times, and I don't think that we have received a full understanding, because we keep being asked this question, and I say it here one more time. The realization of a Palestinian state is the prerequisite for regional integration. On regional transitions and opportunities, a united Syria, free from external interference, remains essential for the stability of the Levant. The kingdom's approach is anchored in investment, political, financial, but above all, investment in the people of Syria, their resilience, creativity, entrepreneurship excellence, and the love of their country. In Lebanon, we continue to support reform, the strengthening of state institutions, and the empowerment of the Lebanese armed forces as the backbone of national sovereignty. Stability in Lebanon depends on leadership and accountability at home and restraint from abroad. We are confident in the Lebanese leadership, and we must ensure that we all support them. For both Syria and Lebanon to be able to face tremendous challenges that lie ahead of them, Israel must withdraw from Syrian and Lebanese territories in full respect of international law and sovereignty. The presence of Israeli forces, occupation of parts of Syria and Lebanon will never be a recipe for security or stability in the region. And in Iran, the opportunity exists to resolve the nuclear file between Tehran and Washington, taking into account legitimate regional concerns. Iran can still choose to correct past grievances by restoring diplomatic relations with Bahrain and joining the GCC vision for regional security grounded in the Beijing Declaration. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will continue to offer its good offices to promote de-escalation, confidence building, and cooperation. We must not be prisoners of the past, but students of its mistakes. The Middle East is not condemned to perpetual transition, it is capable of renewal. Our Vision 2030 in the Kingdom rests on the conviction that transformation, not crisis management, is our destiny. It is our duty to ensure that political transitions in the Levant need not to paralysis, but to peace with purpose, just and lasting. The question before us, therefore, is not simply how to manage transitions, but where those transitions must lead. From occupation to full statehood and sovereignty, from fragmentation to legitimate statehood, from despair to dignity. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will continue to be a partner for peace, prosperity, and security, based on justice, based on rights, based on international legitimacy. The Kingdom will continue to work with all of our partners, and I must highlight the European Union, our partner in the Global Alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution, our partner also in France, co-sponsor of the Peace Conference in New York, which produced the New York Declaration. But also, and above all, we will continue to work with our strategic partner, the United States. We are confident in the commitment and ability of President Trump and his vision to end conflict in the Middle East. We are confident that through the leadership in Saudi Arabia and in partnership with the United States, particularly President Trump, that we can bring peace and prosperity to the Middle East, and we can enjoy a new transformation that puts us in a place where real prosperity can prevail. Thank you very much.
Dr. Manal Radwan, thank you very much for what was an intellectually charismatic set of precise remarks, full of wise advice that should guide those who genuinely seek transformation and who urgently work to restore hope. Thank you very much for that. We have about 35 people on this list now. So what I suggest is that I will take as many as I can. If you ask crisp questions or make precise comments, that would be great. And then I will return once to the panel for each of them to make some concluding remarks. Could I first ask His Royal Highness Prince Turki Al Faisal?
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Heard from Dr. Gergash about maximalist ambitions in the area. And what comes to mind is some of yesterday's comments on Iran on one side and Israel on the other. Iran was pictured in somehow a rosy picture of a victim of international efforts to marginalize it and to contain it and so on. Whereas its belligerent attitude since 1979 and even some interference in the affairs of others was not mentioned in that picture. And in the managing the transitions of the Levant, does anyone from the panel see that Iran is sincere in its efforts to transition from a maximalist interfering, if you like, busybody in the affairs of other states towards a partner that can be included in the construct of not only the Gulf, but of the world. And on Israel's side, we heard yesterday that in order for a country like Lebanon, for example, to get over its problems, that it must reach out to Israel and seek a solution in what Israel can offer it in a relationship that will recognize mutual benefits and so on. And there again, is there anyone who can see the maximalist attitude of Mr. Netanyahu and his government, not only towards a no two-state solution, but also what he put up on a screen as the plan or the map of a greater Israel from the Nile River to the Euphrates River, as being one of the ambitions for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the UK, John Rain.
Thank you, John. My question follows on from Prince Turki's. We seem very much to be living in a time when the old rules-based order is being replaced by a deals-based international order. Mr. Trump's efforts so far have yielded deals across the globe. Do panelists believe that Mr. Trump can deliver a comprehensive deal for the region, which includes Iran, Israel, and Turkey, the three powers who have historically shaped the fate of the Levant? Thank you.
And from the US, Barbara Leaf.
My question, too, is about the role of Iran, but specifically how, Minister Shaibani, you see your government managing that non-relationship in a positive direction for Syria. And for the rest of the panel, well, specifically for our Gulf participants, whether you see a particular role for your two governments in bringing about a different approach by Iran and re-engagement with the US.
And from the UK, but also Lebanon, Ali Mubayed.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chipman. My question is about the economics underpinning successful political transitions. It is very clear from experience that the success of political transitions requires a path to inclusive growth that delivers on job creation and reduces vulnerability in the regions, socioeconomic vulnerabilities, obviously. So my question to Dr. Gargash first is, I mean, what is your vision of how UAE, which has been very active in stabilizing Egypt, supporting economically many other countries in the region, how do you see the role of UAE, but also GCC in general, in dealing with these structural economic deficiencies in the Levant? And to Minister Al-Shaibani, maybe, I know I'm not going to ask you about economics, but as a foreign minister, you certainly have a view of how you want to shape the economic and geo-economic relations with your neighbors, and in particular, Lebanon and Jordan. So would appreciate any comment in terms of this renewed vision to regional Levantine cooperation.
Thank you. And from the UK and the BBC, Frank Gardner.
Thanks very much. My question is for Dr. Anwar Gargash. I'm wondering how the UAE's alleged support for the RSF, the RSF in Sudan, contributes to stability in the Middle East.
And from Bahrain, Hassan Al-Hassan.
Thank you very much, John. We've heard American and other interlocutors speak of the International Stabilization Force in Gaza not as a protection force for the Palestinians, first and foremost, as Dr. Radwan, I think, very eloquently put it, but rather as an Arab-led effort to disarm Hamas, despite Israel's continued categorical rejection of a Palestinian state. My question to the panel is, why would the Arab countries do Israel's dirty work in Gaza?
And from the Netherlands, Maya Nuens.
Thank you, John. My question is for Minister Al-Shaibani. It was reported that you will visit China at some point early this month to meet with State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi. What are your priorities for this meeting, and what are some of the concrete agreements that you hope to come away with? And if I may ask a second question, could you please speak to how you might respond to Beijing's counterterrorism agenda and demands, particularly related to the Turkestan Islamic Party?
And from the US, Jonathan Bass.
So first, I'd like to thank President Al-Shara and Minister Shabani for all the work they've done in leading, since May, the country into the future of nations, and with a great representation to the Syrian people. I would like to say that we need to have a President Trump-led first, an America First policy here, moving forward, leading the negotiations to get the sanctions removed in Congress and then in the UN. And we need to start to look at energizing the street. How do we go about energizing the street to build jobs, factories, and put people to work so that they can put a Syria First program together?
Thank you. And from Oman and our young leaders, Hailana Abu Saidi.
My question is to Minister Al-Shaybani. In May 2025, the Syrian President, Ahmed al-Shara, established the National Commission for the Missing. My question here, what happened to the survivors of Said Naya?
Thank you. And from Egypt and also the young leaders, Samer Mansour.
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies. Everyone here speaks of stability, reconstruction, and regional cooperation. But political traction in the Levant still depends on who actually has legitimacy on the ground, not just diplomatic recognition abroad. So how can our region talk about managing political traction when most political systems remain exclusive, externally influenced, or disconnected from their own people's consent? So, who actually drives the political future of the Levant today? The regional states, global powers, or the people living there? And thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Turkey, Sinem Cengiz.
Thank you, John. My question is to Minister Al-Shaybani about Turkey's security role in Syria. Last week, Turkey has extended its military mandate in Syria for 3 years. Since 2016, Turkey extends its military mandate on annual basis. But for the first time, it has been extended for 3 years, citing the threats that it faces from PKK and its affiliates in Syria, SDF. Yesterday, U.S. Ambassador to Ankara has stated that SDF is closer to integration with the Syrian National Army. Could you please let us know about the process with SDF? Where is it standing? And how do you see Turkey's future security role in Syria, given that last week Ankara has started to train the Syrian army forces?
Thank you. And from the United Arab Emirates, IISS Kandarani.
Hello, this is IISS Kandarani from AFP. I have two questions. The first one to Dr. Shaybani. Do you have a timeline for the potential deal on security and military arrangements that you will be signing with Israel? And is it going to be a sort of demarcation deal or a deal similar to the 1974 disengagement agreement? Do you foresee normalization in the future? And I have also a question to Dr. Gargash and Dr. Radwan. Yesterday, U.S. Envoy Tom Barak told reporters that Gulf states would be interested in investing up to $10 billion in South Lebanon economic and industrial projects if Hezbollah disarms or, backs away from Iran. Is this something you're seriously discussing with Lebanese leaders, with the Americans, and what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Bahrain, Ismail Nar.
Hi, good morning. Ismail Nar from the New York Times. Dr. Anwar, I just wanted to ask, as the period in the Levant transitions to quote-unquote relative peace, we're seeing more developments in Sudan. The UAE is pledging $100 million additional aid to Al-Fashir. Given that the statement from your envoy to the UN, will that $100 million of aid be handled by one party of the war, which is the RSF?
And from the UK, Rosamund Sibyl.
Hi, my question is for Minister Al-Shaybani. Beyond sanctions relief, what does Syria need from Western partners to support economic recovery and open up the financial channels needed for reconstruction and trade?
Thank you. And I'm going to take one more intervention and then return to the panel, perhaps in the reverse order in which they originally spoke. So with Dr. Radwan first and concluding with Foreign Minister of Syria. With that, Raghida Dagam.
Yes, Raghida Dagam, Beirut Institute, and if you permit me, I will ask my question in Arabic because the four panelists are Arabic speakers.
Regarding Minister Shaibani, in Shara visits to Washington, it was as if there was there were credentials being presented as if the relationship now has become a partnership relationship between Syria, the world, and the USA, especially in facing ISIS. Do you think that President Shara is to sign the convention that is to be implemented in Washington, and is the objective to lift sanctions only? Is Syria ready to deal with the issue of minorities, to guarantee the rights of minorities during the visit to Washington? Tom Barak said yesterday that Syria, he said that Syria is marching towards Israel, is it advancing towards Israel, as if there was a will to normalize through the Abraham Accords and not only to delimitate the borders. What is the timeline before we see this? Dr. Manal Radwan, the last visit to Washington is the visit by the Crown Prince. Will the unclear U.S. positions toward the two-state solution, will they constitute an obstacle when it comes to bilateral relationships? And we can see also that there is an unclear position on behalf of the Americans towards the two-state solution.
What a challenge. Lots of questions. I have all of them here because we have a great AI tool that summarizes absolutely every question to every individual person. So if anyone needs reminding, I can provide it. I'm certainly not going to summarize the questions or the points made. Everyone will have taken good physical or mental note. So with that, Dr. Radwan, could you begin? I need to give about 3 minutes to each. So.
Okay, I'm going to try to be very fast. So on Iran, I don't think that anyone can attest to intentions. I think what Saudi Arabia wants to do is to continue building on the Beijing agreement, declaration, and to continue offer its good offices. We think a direct negotiation between Iran and between the United States is essential to resolve the nuclear file. We think it is possible. We think nuclear proposals on a regional scale can be an answer to start building confidence and to start, closing this file. And I think it's also our position that ignoring the regional element in previous agreements probably was one of the main reasons as to these agreements, and specifically the JCPOA not being successful. So now we have this opportunity. On Iran regional's behavior, I think it is also now time for an intense discussion with Iran based on good faith, based on confidence building, and based on agreements that are not just about words but action and deeds. And maybe we are ready to go over our grievances and amend some of the past mistakes. I think there is space for that. Not attesting to intentions at all, but attesting to action. I don't know of any Arab country that I know of that is ready to do what you have described, and I don't want to repeat it. I think that we have heard, for example, from Minister Safadi yesterday about Gaza being ruled by Gazans, and that the security of Gaza needs to be done by also the Palestinian National Police. So I think the discussions are now underway in terms of the International Stabilization Force. I expressed what the Kingdom sees as the best way forward to best implement President Trump's plan and move us from stage 1 to stage 2. On the possibility of achieving this comprehensive peace or a regional understanding that would include Turkey, Israel, and what was the other one? Iran. Certainly, I would put the Arab countries at the forefront of that. I think that is the aspiration. That is what is possible. But it needs to be done based, as I said, on sustainable peace, on justice, on international law, on non-interference, and security, prosperity for all. It is possible for all the countries to actually ensure their security and ensure their prosperity. And we think that President Trump can be the president that can deliver this in partnership with the region and more specifically with Saudi Arabia. On the President Trump or the American position on the two-state, maybe they don't pronounce themselves very clearly on the two-state, but I read no annexation of West Bank, no annexation of Gaza, no deportation, no expulsion. I read that as the backbone of a two-state solution. I read that as saying that these are Palestinian occupied territory and Israel has no sovereignty over them. So if we can move smoothly from the stage 1 to stage 2, and we can build on the prospect in due time for a two-state solution, because all of us, and we've heard it many times, this is the only reality that can work. If we want to start talking about a one-state solution, I think the Palestinians will be very ready if we are talking about equal measures and equal citizenship in whatever country that would be called in the future. So,
Foreign Minister of Palestine, floor is yours.
The maximalist attitude of Netanyahu has been there since 1948. And it has to be challenged by all, because Netanyahu today and his extremist government are blatantly saying it very clearly to the world that they will not stop in Palestine. They will go beyond Palestine to Jordan, to Lebanon, even reaching Saudi Arabia. So we need to take this very, very seriously, and it has to be deterred by all means. On President Trump, yes, we believe President Trump can make it, but peace would entail a lot more than just the ceasefire on the Gaza-Israel front. We welcomed the ceasefire agreement, but we need to see it as a prelude to something that is much bigger. Something that is tied with international law, something that takes into consideration all the work that has been in progress on the two-state solution, on the materialization of the two states, on the recognitions that have taken place in the last years, and more so in the last 2 years, and on the New York Declaration, which stipulates in its items exactly what needs to be done so that we can go closer to where we need to be in terms of the two states. In terms of the ISF, of course, we need a clear mandate on the ISF and a timeline. That timeline is extremely important because we cannot have an ISF that is there forever. We need also for that ISF to be mandated by the UN. And on the disarmament or the decommissioning, we understand that there's a consensus on that, and that needs to be carefully discussed, and we prefer that that is discussed through dialogue. Because in the final analysis, if we want Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem to be one integral component, there needs to be one weapon in that state, and decommissioning or disarmament is extremely important. On the two-state solution, of course, what we would like to see is the two states. And the whole world has a consensus on the two states today, even the United States. We have not heard from the United States until today that they are not for the two states. So if they are still for the two states, we need to see that materializing on the ground. Voicing no annexation is extremely important, and it projects a sense of hope to the Palestinian people because we have been seeing parts of the West Bank being annexed, illegally annexed, and we need to continue hammering the occupier state that annexation is illegal and it doesn't serve the needs of security and stability in the region. If Israel wants a one state, of course, we would accept a one state, but would Israel that is not accepting two states, accept a one state for all of its citizens, a democratic state where Palestinian Arabs and Israelis have the same rights. It will not. So let's forget about what is not possible. Let's talk about what is possible. What is possible and viable and ensures security for the Israel-Palestine and the whole region is the two-state solution and nothing but the two-state solution.
Thank you so much. Dr. Anwar Gargash?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, this is quite a list here. Okay. But I think I want to start with Iran. I think it doesn't help really except to give a very clear-eyed view on past Iranian policies here. And I think the idea basically that the Arab world will serve as forward defense or will serve as part of a deterrence infrastructure for Iran is one of the reasons why we are where we are today. So Iran is a neighbor. We want to resolve all issues politically and have a great relationship. But I think we also have, be clear-eyed of being very critical at a policy that has actually led to this sort of crisis. We can't ignore, for example, that Qatar, which is part of how we see Gulf security, was attacked by both Iran and Israel in a few weeks. So clearly, while we are striving for a relationship that is diplomatic and that is political and to resolve issues rightly, we have to call a spade a spade. And that policy of considering regional influence and regional encroachment as part of the defense of Iran has failed. And I think it's time really to revise and review that policy. I think, yes, it is actually the end, not the end, but the stagnation at least of the old rules and old order. I think the same thing is happening here in the region. And I think what is happening in the region is a reflection of a bigger picture, really. And I think as every country strives for its own version of what I would call a strategic autonomy, we have to realize that we are now at an inflection point, and for us to recreate old policies will bring us back where we were, and we do need a new policies. I think on the question of can Trump deliver, I think it's really about American leadership. We're all seeing we need American leadership to be involved. We need American leadership in various issues of the area. America still has that influence. It has that ability to move the unmovable, and we've seen it with the peace in Gaza. We do need that American leadership. And I think American leadership in itself is not enough. You need also regional cohesion. You need regional changes in order to enable that leadership. On economic development, I'm saying it and I'm repeating it here. For the last 7-8 years, the UAE is basically in a policy that I call a geo-economic phase. And that policy is something that we are trying to move from a geo-economic phase to a geo-technology phase, where we're investing more and more in technology. But again, I mean, we have the means to invest. We are ready to invest in various areas, but I mean, investments also have to be done on sound economic and business models. So countries that expect more and more investments from another country also have to have the correct governance, have to have the correct, transparency, and so on and so forth. We can do aid work, but aid work is not investment work. And investment work actually needs our money people to feel comfortable that the return will be there, the investment is secure, the sort of political climate allows them to see stability for the next 20 years or so. All these things I think are important. And again, I mean, the questions on Sudan I think are very relevant, and I should address them here. And again, this is a complicated issue, but I want to basically concentrate on 3 items. I think the first item is we all made the mistake when the 2 generals who are fighting the civil war today overthrew the civilian government. That was, in my opinion, looking back, was a critical mistake. We should have put our foot down, all of us, collectively, but you know, it was a time where Sudan was just coming out of American sanctions and etc. And we thought, no, I mean, let's get Sudan out of the American sanctions. So we did not call it a coup. We said it's a CO, but did not put the UMP at the end of it. So clearly, what happened later is the relationship of the two generals deteriorated and led Sudan to the current civil war that we are seeing today. I think that's the first item. The second item, the UAE position is very clear in the Quad statement. The Quad statement is extremely clear. Within a 3-month humanitarian ceasefire, the two parties are combatants in the war, political approach to peace, and within 9 months, a transitional civilian government. This is the UAE position. So let's take all the fog away and see, are the generals willing to hand over power to a civilian transition? That is really the crux of the question. And to the question of the UAE announced $100 million of support. Yes, this will go, and it'll mainly go, and we are doubling down on humanitarian support in Sudan. We're doing it through our hospitals in Chad and in South Sudan. And the sooner that unhindered humanitarian avenues will be open also to support people in Sudan, not only in Al-Fashir, but in Al-Fashir and other areas, you will see much more support, not only from the UAE, but from many countries. How are we going to do it? As we do it usually. We do it through our Red Crescent, we do it through international organizations, we do it through World Food, we do it through various international organizations. But clearly, right now, as we condemn the atrocities in Al-Fashir, and they deserve condemnation, and they deserve also for us to condemn every other also atrocity in Sudan. What will stop it today is a ceasefire ASAP and a path to civilian government. Thank you.
Thank you. Foreign Minister, floor is yours. You've got a lot of questions too, but take the ones that you most feel must
I have
be
a lot of questions. I will try to answer some of them. بداية
First of all, we have lots of topics that were discussed, and I think that they require longer sessions to be dealt with. But what I can answer here is the following with regards to our relationship with the neighborhood. When we started building the new Syria, it was based on collaboration and cooperation with everybody, and to redress all the problems that we have inherited from the previous Syria. Namely, when we went to Lebanon, so this was our main objective, to rebuild our relationship with Lebanon based on mutual respect, on collective construction, and I think that the opportunity that we have now in Syria is an opportunity that needs to be grasped by Lebanon, for Lebanon to rebuild itself and to benefit by the economic openness that we have now in Syria. We are ready to stand by Lebanon in the way that they choose, in a way that does not encroach on the sovereignty of the state, because Lebanon is a very important state for us. So we also have some other political alliances on an economic basis, because when we say that we do not want Syria to be polarized, we do not want Syria to be a front against any other side, we do not want Syria to be a point of concern. This is something that supports our economic vision, because today we are building, we want Syria to be a safe place, a trade safe place, and we want it to be a corridor between the East and the West. We want it to be a place for trade, for business, for investment. We want to rebuild our country through investments and not only through aids, through humanitarian aids, international summits and conferences for the rebuilding of Syria. Syria only needs the hindrances to be lifted, the sanctions to be lifted, and I think that this will help Syria to reconstruct and to rebuild progressively. Now, with regards to Iran, we have a long story with Iran, and I do not know that their policy in Syria and in the region was a correct one. It was against the Syrian population. They have intervened interfered in the war aside Assad on all along the 14 years. We do not have a problem with Iran as a state in Tehran, themselves in their state and ourselves in our state. So this interference is the problem that we had with Iran. An interference that has really increased the sufferings of the Syrian populations. Today, Syria is now void of all these interferences. Now, here I would like to link this to the mentality of Israel in the region. I think that any state that wants to build its foreign policies and its military basis on dogmatic basis, as Iran was stating that the road to Jerusalem passes through the Syrian states, and Israel thinks that the path of David passes through Syria. I think that this will not lead to any stability or peace in the area. Syria is for the Syrians. It is not a passage for anybody. It is a meeting point for all these civilizations. It has its sovereignty, and we do not accept any interference in Syria. Now, with regards to the Abrahamic Accords with Israel, this is something that has not been discussed, and this is not new. We have already said this. There is a provocative case in Syria. We have Israeli provocative attacks on a daily basis in Syria. And since December 8 till date, we have more than 1,000 raids against Syria. We also have an incursion and in the buffer zone and the 74 area, and we have also another incursion on the borders of Syria. Consequently, these security incidents with Israel are not acceptable anymore. They cannot justify their policy. Consequently, we are seeing an expansionist policy by Israel, while we are committing to the Convention of, or to the Accords of 1974, and we want an accord that guarantees peace and security between us and Israel. We do not want to enter into a new war, and Syria is not a place that threatens Israel anywhere and in any place. So consequently, the security brilliance that Israel was talking about that existed before October 8, I think that after October 8, it was completely removed from Syria, and we do not have any justification for them to attack Syria, especially that now Syria is only focusing on reconstruction. So today we have tracks, we have negotiations that want to reach a security agreement that, of course, does not affect the 1974 agreement, nor accept a new de facto situation of, in the south for Israel. So we want to have an agreement that allows Syria to rebuild itself, and I think that the Israeli government's policy is against the American policy in Syria, and this is why there are lots of efforts in order to reach, the withdrawal of the Israelis from the Syrian territories to the pre-8 December borders. Now, with regards to our visit to China, of course, it comes within the series of visits that we are paying since December 8 till date. In fact, these are visits in order to show the new image of Syria, to open the doors for investments, and to benefit by the help of everybody at this new stage. Consequently, there were some security concerns by China. We have tried to explain them and to erase them. We want to have with China a very good relationship. This is a very important relationship for us. Now, with regards to the lifting of these sanctions, there are still sanctions, amongst them the Caesar Act and some other laws that have considered or classified Syria as a terrorist sponsoring state since 1974. And there was also the sanctions that were imposed on Syria because because Syria has supported some specific trends and policies, and now these policies have completely disappeared. So there is no justification to have any sanctions against Syria. Consequently, how can the world offer anything to Syria if the international community does not lift the sanctions against Syrians? And the Syrians will launch the reconstruction process themselves. But we need, of course, to remove all these hindrances and obstacles. Now, our visit to Washington next week, so the first week of November, comes within the same context. Syria is open to everybody. President Ahmed al-Shara will be at the White House at the start of November, and of course this is a historic visit. It is the first visit of a Syrian president, so it's the first Syrian president who enters the White House since more than 80 years. And of course, we have lots of topics that are dealt with, will be dealt with, of course, lifting the sanctions, a new chapter between Syria and the United States. We want a very good relationship with the United States. We want also help and assistance in the IISS. So this is why any assistance with regards to this issue, we will be needing their support. ISIS is not only the responsibility of Syria. This is an international threat that cannot be only dealt with by the Syrian government. This is why we need the international support to face the ISIL or Daesh, because they are against the reconstruction of Syria. And I think that we will have lots of points that will be discussed between during this visit, especially, of course, the rebuilding of Syria. Now, the change that we have had in Syria is more or less similar to the change that happened after the Cold War ended. So there is a new Middle East that started with Syria, with the toppling of the Assad regime, and now, of course, we have these new relationships and these new tendencies towards Syria to rebuild relations with the US, the EU, and all the other states. So this is a new tendency that wants to put Syria in a new place where it can rebuild, reconstruct, for it to be a good front between the East and the West, far from any polarization. Consequently, these visits come within the same context. Now, with regard to the role of Turkey in Syria. Turkey is amongst the states that are interested by Syria from different aspects. Previously, Turkey looked at some areas, especially in the north of Syria, was a vision of national security. And of course, this is important for Turkey, and we cannot disregard this. And whenever we say that Syria is not a threat to any state for the region, this, of course, concerns Turkey, because we consider them as a partner, and we do not want Syria to be a threat for Turkey. So what we were able to achieve was changing the approach and the vision that was established previously. With the SDF, we have tried to change the approach into a common agreement on the 10th of March. So we are holding regular meetings last week.
Yes. يعني yes. يعني هناك تفاهم.
So we have lots of agreements, and we have changed this approach. We passed it from a military approach into a dialogue approach. We want the dialogue to be amongst the Syrians. So there is no, of course, march from Syria to Israel. It is only an attempt to stop the Israelis' attacks against Syria. So we are trying to have an opportunity, an inspiring opportunity for us to build a nation that is dreamt of by all the Syrians. So we want this diplomacy to succeed over, their provocations.
And may I conclude this session with one personal reflection, which is that it's a bit banal for a conference chair to say it's an honor to chair a panel, but I have to say, in 22 years, in a couple of dialogues, I think I've chaired about 287 ministerial panels, and because of the clarity of strategic thought and the elegance of policy expression, this one, I hope you will all agree, was right at the top. Thank you very much.